Looks like our attendance has steadied a bit. And I think they always said that early bird gets the worm. So I say for the people that showed up on time, we can kick it off. But my name is Catherine McSweeney, and I'm part of the Microsoft Power Platform team here in the Americas. And I'm joined by my partner in crime, Rustam Patel, who will be joining us to share the content with me a little later on. Today, we're talking about building apps faster with low code and AI. And I think limiting it to building apps faster would be doing today's content a disservice, that we want to talk about the entirety of the Power Platform and what it can do in your business today. So to start, I'm going to tell a little story about one of our customers, which is Chevron. So what you're seeing here is a picture of a Chevron oil rig, and these oil rigs go out into the middle of the ocean to drill down for oil. This process involves many calculations, lots of data points, many people, many spreadsheets, all the things in order to do one drilling process. And of course, as everything goes, something might change or a number calculation might move, or maybe the ocean's temperature is changing. And then it would take a step back from all of their processes as they would regroup, recalculate, and start all over again just to do this one drilling. That was really slowing down their business model at large. That was when they found the Power Platform, and they found a way not just to build an application to track it, but a way to organize their data so that one change in the calculations would go across all of the data that they had collected and make sure that no problem or app was left behind. When the Chevron leadership team found out about how the drilling team was using the Power Platform, the conversation turned from how do we build one app faster so that way they can keep up with these changes in real time, but how can we use some of this technology to transform 1,000 processes a year? Chevron's been one of our headlining stories for years. You can look up the entirety of their customer story online. And this is one of the things that we want to challenge you all in the audience to listen to and find in your own company today. So take a step back from one use case or one example of Power Platform, and we challenge you to think about how can we transform 1,000 processes a year in your company today. Now, this is just one example of a customer priority that we hear, but there's been a lot more that we're hearing come up again and again from various industries, from retail to financial services, government to education. So I'll give you a second to kind of read through these priorities you are seeing on the screen and think about which ones are showing up in your organization today. These are themes that we're going to talk about throughout the presentation as we take these themes and these priorities and tie them back to ways that the Power Platform can help, but looking at it again at scale. So instead of just thinking about that one HR application, how can we use the Power Platform to empower an organization to create an excellent employee experience overall? How can we use automation, not just to simplify one inbox rule, but to really simplify the lives of your employees to create process simplification and allow your employees to do more important work? Of course, I know you're all here to hear more about AI. We will talk about AI and all the different ways that you can use it in your business to optimize operations and really give the power of technology to all of your employees today. And then I know that it's been a narrative for a while about Power Platform being for citizen dev, but this is really for the pro devs as well. I know there's many of you on the phone here today. So we want to talk about how we can refocus the development in your employees' time so that way they can empower an organization, create new functionality instead of just maintaining old systems that might exist today. So hopefully these themes are resonating with you. And before we move on any further, I want to call out that the Q&A chat is open for any questions that you might have. Rustam and I will take turns checking it out and making sure that we get to as many questions as we can as we go on.
Excellent. Thank you, Catherine. And so this presentation is divided up into 3 sections. We're going to talk a little bit about Power Platform in the enterprise, the ways in which customers can use Power Platform, and even some of the common ways or patterns in which we see that. We'll talk, of course, about AI and Power Platform. There's a really, really cool demo that I'm excited to share with you today. And then we'll also go into the building blocks of these unique AI features within the Power Platform, because there are many. And we'll chat about how each one of them works, when it can be useful, and get your brain to start thinking of different ways in which, oh my goodness, I did not realize that this technology exists today, it can be used in this way, and these features are now here. So very exciting stuff that we have to share. And so let's talk about Power Platform in the enterprise. But before that, because we have a diverse audience on this call, let's just ground ourselves in what is the Power Platform. And so this is the Power Platform on screen. It is these 10 things, and all of these 10 things are AI enabled. In the top row, you'll see the end products themselves. We have Microsoft Copilot Studio, Power Automate, Power Apps, Power Pages, Power BI. These are the actual end products and solutions that can actually go and build apps or build websites or build automations or build copilots, or also what was once known as chatbots. The bottom layer, kind of like, think of it like similar product or technologies that are actually shared across the Power Platform. And so, for example, Dataverse is the data backend that actually enables a lot of the storage of like where, like if you have a Power App and I'm entering in information, where does that get stored? It can get stored in a Dataverse table, and a variety of other different connected sources. And speaking of connected sources, the idea of connectors is this idea that wherever your data may live, whether it be in a SharePoint list, a SQL Server environment, SAP, Dynamics 365, Salesforce, Oracle, our platform can actually connect and interact with those systems, automating things and building on top of those experiences. And of course, we have AI Builder, which is this idea like, hey, can we actually really quickly train custom models to do different things, whether it's image recognition or form processing, and then expose that into a website or an app or an automation. And so it sounds a bit ubiquitous, but we'll get much more concrete through this presentation as to how these products work individually and how they actually magically can work very well with each other, which is why we're like talking about the Power Platform. This isn't a webinar just about Power Apps or Power Automate. These products work so well together, and we want to start talking about that together as well. And so Power Platform in the enterprise, there's this thing which we now just call the patterns of value. And we call it the patterns of value because what we've seen with customers is time and time again, customers who use this technology, understand it, take it enterprise-wide, using it in a meaningful way, they tend to actually use it in one of 6 of these ways. And so the patterns of value is just how businesses use Power Platform. And we'll talk about this. And so these are the 6 ways. There are, of course, more, but these are the 6 most popular ways in which customers take these technologies and think about it, right? There was a time when Power Platform started. It started from a place, of course, of just Power Apps and was flows, but now, of course, Microsoft Power Automate. And so while there was a time and a place where Power Platform may have just been about an app for this and app for that, it's come to a place of it's so much more. And so let's start with a few examples, and we'll do a double click on each of these. App modernization, this idea where in many of your organizations, you probably have a backlog of apps, apps that are running today, perhaps, apps that ran in Internet Explorer and had compatibility issues. There was a need to re-architect, rebuild this app just so it can be modernized and be useful and continue to serve its need. Oftentimes, when that need comes about to actually rebuild, re-architect, or examine an old thing and modernize it into something new to be useful, there's a decision process that happens. How do I go about that? Do I use professional developers? Can I buy something off the shelf? Or is there a third option, this idea of low-code solutions, being able to develop solutions very quickly, low cost, and completely modernized and supported for the long term? And so more on that in a bit. This idea of business agility. I mentioned how we have these 1,000+ premium connectors. All organizations have a core system they rely on, or hopefully they have one, whether it be Dynamics 365, SAP, Oracle, any of the big players. Being able to connect to that data in real time and build on top of that, or even read and write back and forth, instead of doing things in Excel or InfoPath or a variety of other solutions that exist but are not connected and can't be observed, managed, can't be compliant, all those types of things. And what's really neat, we'll talk about even the other 4 as well in more detail, but below each one of these patterns is actually a public customer story. And I share this because I want you to actually take a look at the value statements. Now, in any of these stories, there may have been many impact statements, but I chose one in particular because I love just how diverse our solutions actually help customers across their value chain. And so in the case of American Airlines, something that hopefully is very simple to comprehend, the idea of reducing taxi time. How did they do this? They were able to connect their frontline workforce, the people that actually work at the airport terminals, with baggage claims, with people that check in customers. Being able to work off the same set of data in real time actually able to help reduce taxi time per day up to 10 hours. That improves this cost efficiency savings. There's customer experience savings as well, benefited from that. And you can read the others that are on screen. But this idea that, hey, look, Power Platform, it can actually go beyond just saving time or saving money. It can actually impact the value chain, improving customer experience, customer retention, and other things like that. And I think that's really exciting. And so let's do a little double click on each of the 6. And so app modernization, I spoke a little bit about this. The diagram on the screen, there's the 7 R's of how to approach app modernization. Sometimes if the app is old and no longer needed, you can start with, hey, we just got to retire the app. You make sure it's compliantly retired. There's no data leakage and stuff like that. Even retire can be its own complicated thing. The idea of just, hey, keep it as is, remain. And then there's all these different ones in between. The idea of replace, rebuild, re-architect, rehost. And what I want you to think about is not that, hey, Power Platform is right for all of these situations. Every single app is not about, any solution is not about, hey, build it on Power Platform. There's a time and a place for Power Platform. That's what we want you to start thinking about. It may be completely appropriate to have professional developers work and rebuild something. And even if that is the case, they may actually benefit from using some Power Platform technologies to accelerate their professional development. And so this idea that, hey, Power Platform is not just an option, but something that can be integrated into your existing workflows, whether it is buying SaaS applications and then connecting to it, or having professional developers also use this technology to benefit from an accelerated solutioning. And so app modernization is one of the ways in which customers have regularly used Power Platform to accelerate refactoring, rebuilding, and replace. These 3 are highlighted for a reason because Power Platform tends to shine in those situations. And I think that's, a really compelling story. It's not about like pro developer or low code. It can be an and statement. And you'll hopefully start to see even more of that with the second one, which is accelerating professional development. There was a time and a place where I actually used to want to be a professional developer myself. I was interested in computer science and all that. And I have a bit of a developer background. And so what I love about this is it's actually showing a lot of the things for an enterprise-grade app to be compliant, to be secure, to be administrated appropriately, to be configurable. All of these listed here are actually things that arguably aren't necessarily fun or enjoyable for professional developers' time. As a professional developer, you preferably be wanting to focus on really problem solving, focusing on the intellectual property. You don't want to be spending time with, oh my God, I got to configure the security side of it, the compliance side of it, even the accessibility side of it. Power Platform, Power Apps specifically, when you publish an app, accessible technologies are built into it, like screen reading technologies, even on an iPhone. If you install Power Apps on an iPhone, any app you publish will actually benefit from that accessibility, extensibility, being able to publish to multiple endpoints, whether it's a PC, a phone, a tablet, different operating systems. You just publish once, you work on one app, and the solution can exist on many endpoints. Even those 2 things simply, that in a professional developer's time may eat up many hours, many man hours working on those solutions. And that's not necessarily something that's an enjoyable, useful amount of time, use of time. And so Power Platform can even help with things like that. And that's true for many things on the stack. For development, from, of course, security and compliance administration. So we talked about development, and even into DevOps for folks who use GitHub or Visual Studio or Azure DevOps. Power Platform actually can integrate with those technologies as well. And so you can begin to see that, hey, wait, this is interesting. I always thought it was an or statement, but the idea of and, Power Platform and Visual Studio and GitHub, or it can live in isolation by itself. And that's something that, we see customers showing us that, hey, Power Platform has helped me accelerate my professional development. The third pattern, empowering departments. And I think this one is so cool. We used to call it, empowered. This idea of empowering departments is also synonymous with the idea of citizen development, this idea that everyone can be a developer. We understand that folks in the organizations may see that as a risk. Some folks may actually embrace that as like, hey, this is actually the way we need to do it. Let's figure out how to go and get this done. Microsoft, can you help me? And What's really interesting is a pattern that's emerged, of course, from customers that we see. And I love this statement. It's if IT can't meet business needs, then non-IT or the business, the departments themselves will try to tackle their problem anyways. And that can show up in disparate sources, non-compliant sources, non-secure sources as well. And so those things can look like SharePoint lists or endless versioning of Excel documents that people will go in and make one edit and break all these formulas and macros and stuff like that. Access databases, of course, other third-party solutions can exist for that. And what you're seeing is this iceberg, right? Like these are all the things that may be happening, and in IT, you may not even have visibility or an understanding that these things are happening. Chances are that if this is true, that IT is not meeting business needs, the business needs to figure out solutions for themselves, and so they're going to go and do that work, and that creates externalities and risks in that regard. For the customers that understand this, and where IT can have an oversight into all these different things that individual departments want to create, IT can serve as the governance lead, the security lead, and help provide guidance to all departments so that they can retain visibility, control, exercise compliance, security policies, while just letting the departments do what they do best, understanding the nuances in their processes and opportunities to automate or improve things. And so empowering departments, this idea that Power Platform can do just that. While it can be scary, or some IT people may subscribe that, hey, this is scary, you're likely already living in a scary world that you're just not looking at because it's underwater. It's not visible to you. And Power Platform can make all that visibility as well as wash away all these other systems that are not connected and things of that nature. And so those are three. I'm going to hand it over to Catherine to speak about the other three, which are also equally just as exciting.
Thanks, Rustam. I know the way Rustam and I split it up is I feel like he got to talk about his favorite three, and now I'll get to share about my favorite three. So next up is business agility. And I think one of my favorite things when talking about business agility is it gives us a moment to hear on the 1,000+ connectors that exist in the library today. And when we say 1,000, we mean 1,000. So regardless of where your data sits today, regardless of where you want your data to go, there is most likely, with a pretty heavy degree of certainty, a pre-built connector that's already available and ready for you to use today. So what that could look like is, let's say you've got an SAP system that has been in your business for 20+ years. We don't need you to rip and replace it. We're not asking for a full migration that could take many years and millions of dollars. Instead, what if we're able to access that data in a way that's easy to use, easy to read, and keeps your data aligned, bring it to the Power Platform, surface that data in a way that's usable for your employees today. Same goes for Oracle, same goes for Salesforce, or some of these systems that we completely recognize are pillars of your business, and that trying to shut that down or make edits to those systems is a tall order. So why don't we use that data in the way that it sits today, connect to it and bring it into the Power Platform, bring it into Dataverse, organize the data, and find ways to make it usable just how it is. So I think this allows your business, instead of doing these big migrations or these big reorg, I forget which of the R's it was on Rustam's earlier, but it allows you to be more agile with your data and with your applications. So that way you can make some quick changes, edit them in real time, have that low code ability on some of these pro code systems of record. So I think business agility just allows us to add Power Platform to your business, whether it's not in there today or it already is. I mean, Power Platform has the ability to also be its own core system, but we're not naive. We know that's not the case in many of your organizations today. So why not add Power Platform almost as a wrapper using these data connectors to allow your business to be more agile? So business agility is a great one. The next one is empowering employee experiences. And this one's really cool because I think it talks about what many of you are already familiar with, and that is the Microsoft 365 suite. Obviously, here at Microsoft, we are big fans of Microsoft Teams. We are big Outlook users. Can't necessarily say if I'm a fan or not of that one, but that is where we know that your employees are spending their time today. And that business data can be available to everyone, everywhere. You have, I'm sure, your security, your controls. Those are applications that you guys are familiar with. But what if we're able to use that and enhance what's already available today? What if we take these applications and make it one step further so that we can add a level of communication? You can do approvals in the tools you're already using today. So if you can insert Power Automate into Teams, if you can add some of those rules and automations into Outlook, how much more productive could your employees be using the tools they're already familiar with, but taking out some of these manual processes? This will allow you to add some of these AIs and co-pilots that we're going to get to in a second into the tools that your organization's familiar with. And not only will that improve their productivity and their efficiency, but we found that it really does enhance their experience. You will have happier employees when they're spending less time doing tasks that are bogging them down. So that makes for a happy employee. How about a happy IT team? And this is probably my favorite of the patterns and definitely one of the most common, but that is hyperautomation. So hyperautomation is defined, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, but to level set as really scaling automation across the business. So instead of just adding one process with automation, what does it look like if we automate thousands of processes? What does it look like if we add RPA, robotic process automation, and instead it is hands-free automation that's happening in the background, so that way you're not even thinking about it as these processes are running. Automation is something that Microsoft has invested heavily in over the past couple of years. And you can see on the right that this is not just me and Rustum thinking that we're the best at it, but these are proven market research sources that you could read all about it yourself, but that we are proven to be a leader by Gartner, by Everest Group, by GigaOM, and everyone else that's tried this automation. And I really think what sets us apart is the fact that we've got DPA, RPA, IPA, like I mentioned, whether it's a manual automation process or something that's running in the background, plus the recent addition of process mining. So process mining here at Microsoft is a tool that we have that'll go in and scan your systems for any processes that are running that could be automated. It's a fantastic technology that will show you things you didn't even know about your own systems today and ways that automation can improve that before you even have to figure out what that next step might be. Process mining is a pretty complicated process, so I'm not going to try to explain it all, but I highly recommend everyone look into it. And I do think it's something that sets us apart here at Microsoft that we can offer as you're looking into hyper automation across your entire organization today. Next up, and I've been seeing a couple questions come in about this, but if we were to even take a step back, and this one's not technically a pattern of value as Rustum mentioned, but one of the things that makes Power Platform so unique is that it's got unmatched governance and security controls at scale today. For those of you that are IT and security folks on the line, I'm sure that you have looked at governance, compliance, and security when it comes to your Microsoft 365 suite. And we're happy to say that all of those rules and processes that are in the Microsoft 365 suite are available in the Power Platform. Starting at the core with managed environments. That'll allow you to have your data encryption, your data loss prevention, making sure that the data that sits in your environments today is fully managed by the IT team. And I think this is another good time to mention, we know that the narrative has been that everyone can do it. A low-code, no-code platform, so simple that a baby can build an app. We know you and IT know that's not true, but even if it were, this security and compliance and some of the governance tools make it so they will not be able to do anything they're not supposed to be doing. We talk a lot about if your data is in SharePoint today, that is high risk. When Rustum's talking about the bottom of the iceberg, that's where your data is at risk, because when it's in a SharePoint site, it's in an Access database, there can be adds, edits, deletions that you're not aware of. So why not take this step to manage those environments, to manage the people that are making these applications or automations, so that way you're able to track their activities, their usage, all of the things that'll make it so that you and IT really do get to manage your department as you see fit. We've got lots of great tools that are available on the internet. I'll see if I can drop some links into the chat potentially so you guys can check them out. But there's COE starter kits. There's communities that you can join to talk more about governance. I think it's really cool that we have so many resources that are available. Oftentimes, I think for free as well, or they're available to you on the internet or on GitHub. So definitely check those out, because I think it's something that sets us apart as a platform. And it's what you've known and loved about Microsoft that applies to Power Platform as well.
Terrific. Thanks, Catherine. And so that was the patterns of value, right? The ways in which businesses can use Power Platform. There's another side to this coin, right? So we spoke about like, hey, like if this is how businesses use it, the other side of this is like, why would IT choose this, right? There are other players in this space of low-code solutions. And we'd like to expose the patterns for, why we win or why customers choose and trust us. And sometimes for like, complete mission critical tasks like that Chevron example. And I'll move left to right. And the more we move to the right, the more differentiated and unique, I think, Microsoft value you'll come to find. And so the very first one, agility, the promise of low code solutions is that it's easier. It's less of a barrier of adoption than, going and getting a computer science degree and learning, how to code basic C#, all that stuff, right? And so with ease comes greater agility. If I can take less time to author something, I'm getting faster at it. And so agility is the most obvious, most visible one, probably why many of you folks are here in the first place is, hey, I think low code can help you do something faster. And so that's part of the value. Then we move to the next one, governance. Catherine just spoke on that. I think with many folks who are familiar with Microsoft technology, being able to govern over that estate, whether it's administrators, policies, super users, all of those things are available as switches and configurations, and that even extends down to the data layer. Like when we talk about Dataverse, you can have many different roles and different security access privileges for a variety of different needs, and all of that is, of course, granularly configurable within Power Platform and the Microsoft Cloud estate. And like that, of course, it extends over to our security story. We have built-in identity, user management, data loss prevention. Even one of the neat things, Catherine mentioned in the governance story is like, you can actually configure anything you want. If you don't want to allow users even to connect to a certain data source, you just want to restrict it to, hey, you can connect to Dynamics 365 data, but you cannot connect to SAP. You can actually govern over that. You can pick and choose. What things to connect to, what are the policies, all those things. The granularity is there, which is fantastic. And as we continue to move over to the right, it gets even more advanced, more value that Microsoft uniquely and only Microsoft can bring. Of course, we have responsible AI principles, AI that is fair, reliable, safe, private, secure, transparent, and inclusive. And of course, we have some of the best technologies to actually take the brand new generative AI capabilities that have been, hot this year and customize that to your needs very easily. Again, that idea of like low code with AI. That is something unique to our platform. We have had AI Builder for a number of years. And of course, just, GPT functionalities now being rolled out into that infrastructure. I spoke a lot of how our platform is very pro-developer friendly with APIs, connectors being built into some pro-dev tools, whether it's Azure DevOps, Visual Studio, GitHub. That's something that we uniquely do. And the last thing, which I think is also important to touch upon, and it's actually funny because sometimes I'll be looking on, there's a Power Apps subreddit, and it'll be interesting. People post different questions there. But what's actually interesting to see is just how often people have said accessibility is a reason why they skilled up on it, learned it, because developers were tasked to provide an enterprise-ready app that actually had to meet certain compliance standards for accessibility. Doing it on Power Apps was actually the best option for even some pro developers because it didn't have to worry about, being able to develop across those technologies for different operating systems, different endpoints. It was just the most logical and compliant thing to do. And so this is like the patterns for why IT will choose us. It's any of these six things, or all six of them, are important to IT. And if they are, Power Platform will be able to rise to the occasion and meet those needs. And so that concludes, I think, this section on like, how to think about Power Platform, the ways in which it can be used. And now let's start talking about some of the more juicy and exciting stuff, which is, of course, AI in Power Platform. Catherine?
Thanks, Rustam. So AI and Power Platform, we have reached the bulk of the presentation, the meat of it all, what you guys are probably here to say. And I think that AI and Power Platform has everyone very excited about the possibilities And one of the reasons that I think everyone's been so excited is because we talk about English as a coding language and we mean it. I want to leave this up on the screen just for a moment longer. With AI and Copilot and Power Platform, English is now a programming language. Let that sink in because it's true, it's here, and it's happening today. So what this looks like, and if we can go to the next slide, Russ, I wanted to make sure they saw it in big bold, but this is kind of how we view English as a programming language. So starting at the bottom, this is where everything first started off, right? With the machine languages, using binary, using hexadecimal, things that are far above my pay grade and potentially before my time. Moving forward, you've got the low-level languages. That's assembly and C, and those keep going up to high-level languages. Here's where things are getting a little bit more familiar. I'm sure there's many of you on the call who can do coding in C#, who are familiar with Python. And that has been such a highly coveted skill set for so long, but it's also become kind of a backlog as technology continues to advance and we need to create applications quicker and faster, and more of our processes are becoming automated. We really need a platform and a language, a coding language that can keep up with the demand that's happening in society today. And that's where you see the natural languages, Power Platform, GitHub Copilot, and all of these where we're really able to use English, and mostly as a starting point. I think that there's a lot of ways, and you can get really good at some of this prompt engineering that everyone's been talking about, but we'll get into some demos later on. But the ability to describe what you need to do and have a baseline to start at using English as a coding language has the potential to save you so much time, just so much brain process, and really, again, free you up to do the things that you can do better than anyone else. It allows you to leverage your strengths. It's not necessarily a threat to your business or to your job, but it's a complement to the work that you're already doing to allow you to be more efficient and create more of what you're best at. Another way to look at it is if we go to the next slide, Rustam, this is kind of shows how we've looked at different tools and how much technical skills are needed to do each of these. So at the top of the list here, we've got Word and PowerPoint. That is where I will say it. That's where I like to spend my time. Maybe a little Excel if I'm feeling bold. We work in marketing. We have other strengths. But even for me, you know, SharePoint Access down to Power Platform. I remember when I built my first app on Power Platform, and it makes things so much more accessible than as you're going down to the bottom of the screen back to these coding languages, to JavaScript, to C#, things like that. And what we've done by making English a coding language has allowed Power Platform to become even more accessible than it was. This puts it right up there under Excel when you add the AI Copilot features. And I want you to notice how long it stretches as well. When you're looking at the technical skills, we still talk about Power Platform as a no-cliffs tool. So you can make it as custom as you want. There's still the custom coding aspect of it. So you have that leg up to make it as technical as you want. However, on that left side, it'll allow more people to use it because using English as a programming language beyond just the coders and the people who know these programming languages by heart. I think it's a cool visual to show how AI Copilot's changing the game and making it hopefully a go-to tool for your organization regardless of the problem.
Thank you, Catherine. Cool. And so we're getting more into the AI story, right? And so let's just ask a question, right? With English as a programming language, that's great. That's super cool. It democratizes this technology. What is AI going to do for Power Platform? I think the visual we just showed does a great job, helping understand like, wow, it's really going to democratize this technology, make it easier for everyone to use. In fact, the idea of citizen developer, the idea that everyone can be a developer is actually more true today than it ever has been before because of this technology. But when you think about, okay, AI and Power Platform, what is something that I can take back to my leadership team or a way for me to understand it today and even long into the future? It is going to do these two things. It is going to make apps, automations, copilots, and websites just easier to make. And all of those things that do get made, the apps, automations, copilots, they'll be richer in experience. And so easier to make, richer to use. That is what is true today with the gamut of AI features that are out and innovations we introduce in the future, and even on the short-term, long-term, medium-term, they will continue to support this narrative of like, we will make it just even easier. You think it's easy today, we will make it even easier. You think the experience is are vibrant, we will improve those experiences even more so. And if you have greater needs, I'm very confident we will be able to address them in the near term with what we're doing with AI. And so what you're seeing on screen is a variety of features. It's not an exhaustive list, but these are actually all features that have leveraged AI in some capability. What's really cool about Power Platform is we've actually been doing this for a number of years. We introduced AI Builder, I think, about 2, almost 3 years by now. We're actually using, I think, GPT 2 or 2.5 or 3, one of the earlier versions of it, to actually go and use English to power effects. So the idea of like writing a formula in English and then being able to translate that into Power Platform. My point of that is like we've been actually using these generative technologies for a long time, and so we have some expertise with it. And finally, when the models became robust enough, why is Microsoft so quick to be able to commercialize this technology and make it accessible? It's because this isn't our first rodeo. We've been doing this for a number of years, and now you're actually seeing the dividends of that expertise being exposed into different features. And now we use the word Copilot. The idea of Copilot is English to something. And so with Power Platform, it's about, hey, English or natural language to creating an app, natural language to creating a flow, natural language to creating a Copilot or a chatbot, natural language to creating a website to a report. And of course, there's even more features that are the AI powered. But the hero statement is that idea, like English is a programming language. It's like, it is true. It works today. We'll show you a really cool demo in just a moment. But here's a list of things that we have by our different products. You'll see everything from the idea of like, hey, having an AI to convert an Excel file to a Canvas app, generative responses in custom Copilots that you build, and more. And if you're interested, we have Copilot availability reports. This is important for people to understand, hey, because English is just one language. There are many languages. Our Copilot availability reports expose, hey, in what region, in what language, for what feature are these new things being rolled out for? That's actually just a public-facing Power BI report that gets updated monthly. And so if you're interested in understanding, hey, what's available in what language and what region, you can go to that Copilot availability report and just see, hey, is what I'm looking for available yet for me? And so this has been a lot of, I think, tell. Let's get to the showing part of it. And so this is, I think, one of the coolest demos. It's done by one of our technical specialists. The minute I saw this, I loved it. I thought it was super cool. And I will show it to you in just a moment. But this is what you're going to see. You're going to see an end-to-end working solution in Power Platform built in 8 minutes with Copilot. What the solution is quite straightforward. It's the idea of creating a ticket management app. But more than that, we're going to create a Copilot or chatbot that is exposed on a website, and I can actually capture customer data. It can answer other questions, but if a customer asks, hey, I need support, I need help, it'll then actually cue the system to then, okay, I need name, email, address, and what's the problem you're having? And then great, we got you. Well, someone will follow up. So it's going to start with that, build logic to, of course, do that, capture and write into a Dataverse record or creating a new role in a database for a new ticket, and then expose that in a system. And so, yes, that sounds complicated. It's all going to be done in 8 minutes. And what I want you to think about is before this advent of English as a programming language, of AI, right? How long would this have taken in your organization to solve? Right? Would it have been, weeks, months, even in the hands of a seasoned Power Platform or low-code specialist or a developer? Even maybe taking them a couple of days or weeks. And professional developers, maybe even more. But this is the whole point. AI and Copilot in Power Platform is, missing the word right now, but things that took months or weeks is now going to just take hours and days. It is a fundamental step change in just what is now capable in our systems today. And so without further ado, let's get to this demo. And so what you're seeing on screen right now, and yes, it's a video recording. It's easier for me just to narrate over this and pause as needed. But of course, it's a live demo. And so we're in Power Apps. You'll see at the top, there's 3 tabs, one for Power Apps, Automate, and Chatbots, or Copilot Studio. But we'll start here. And so what we're doing is we're generating an app with natural language. The first thing we need to do is actually determine what is the database architecture, what is the backend data. And so within Power Apps, with Copilot, we can start with that. And so we're telling Copilot, hey, build a customer support ticket app, which includes contact name and description. You can see in real time it is generating that. In fact, it's even loading sample data in there for you to understand, okay, it's got the data type right. Yep, but that's a string, description, great. What else do we need? You can see it's an iterative process. You can see trial and error augment. We need to add email address. Great, let's add that Copilot. And again, adds sample information in there. You know what else may be important for a ticketing app? Perhaps severity with, one of 3 selections. You can see Copilot is able to keep up. It's even, again, loaded in sample information. And this is just super cool, right? Like I'm developing a whole data structure. We haven't even gotten to the user experience, just the data backend, right? With data validation and controls in place so people can't mess up records. All of that's just being authored for me, just with natural language. You can see that we're going to keep adding to it. You're adding a choice of services, and we're even directing it from a website called apartments.com. And so now we've been telling it, hey, source data inputs in this table from a known source that's publicly available. And if you make mistakes, or if you don't want something, hey, less is better. You can tell Copilot, you know what, undo that, remove these, change this, give me add more sample data, and it'll do just that. And so you can create the app. And so we'll return to the app in a moment. Now we're going to Power Automate. And this is the experience for create a flow from natural language. And so what do we need this flow or this automation to do? Is we want it to take inputs from somewhere and then write records in another place and even send an email to the person about like, yep, we got you. And so let's see what's being written here. Get input from Power Virtual Agent. Power Virtual Agent we haven't even authored yet. And create a record in Dataverse. Dataverse is the backend for the app that we just made. And then, of course, we're going to add the other feature, which is, hey, once you've done that, also send an email to let the individual know that you've got their record. And so on screen is super cool. We just typed in one sentence, and it's understanding, okay, we're going to create a flow that starts with a trigger from a virtual agent, and it takes 2 actions. It writes a record and then sends an email. And you can see with low-code solutions, it's authenticating to your user credentials, which makes security and compliance checks built into the tool. And then you can see we have granular inputs. And so right now we have to configure each of these 3 connectors, right? A connector to Copilot Studio, connector to Dataverse, and a connector to Outlook or my email domain. And so what's happening right now is the Power Virtual Agent, the connector in the flow, we're telling it, okay, you need to capture these 3 things from the chatbot. You need the contact, the email, the description. And so we've just configured that. You can almost think of them like global variables is what we're just setting up right now in this tool. And so then the Dataverse record, we're specifying the table which we just created in the other tab, which is called customer support tickets. And we're throwing in those 3 fields, which is name, email, description. And then we're connecting the global variables to those data sources right now. And then the last piece is, hey, now that you've done the record collection, let's send an email. What's the email? Who's the email going to be sent to? It's going to be sent to the email you just captured for that record. We'll give it a subject line, enter in a boilerplate name. If you want to even add the person's name, it's like, hi, first name, last name, just as easy as in low code. And that's being configured right now as well. And you'll see, hey, someone will contact you soon. That's on the Power Automate side. So let's get to Copilot Studio and this what was Power Virtual Agents. We're going to build an entire chatbot right now. And so the way of building chatbots or copilots is completely different. What we're going to do is we're actually going to create a generative bot or a generative copilot just by pointing it to a website. And so in this case, we're going to use apartments.com. And so we're telling the tool, hey, create an entire working generative AI bot just by pointing it at a website. And you can see in a few minutes, it's done. And we can test it out right now. So on the left-hand side, you're going to see that little chat window. just asking a general prompt because, hey, you want to have a chatbot experience because some people prefer that, can it answer any question? In this case, how do I manage a property? Here's 10 different ways in which you can manage a property. Great. So the chatbot's actually useful for many things, like just general Q&A. But then for this one uniquely, I want to supplement it. I want to be able to have that, hey, if a customer needs help, they need support, right? I want to cue the system to do something, to ask questions, take turns, and do just that. And so you can see I'm going to the topics section. And there's a couple of boilerplate topics that come with any templated bot. You can see we're actually going to add a topic that is generatively built. So the idea of creating topics now is something that's also just very easy to do. So the topic is called customer support. And we're going to create a customer support topic. And I want you to capture 3 things: name, description, email address. That's like, we're just plain English. We're just asking, hey, build the whole hierarchy of dependencies for that right now, just in plain English. And you'll create it. It'll take a moment to generate it, and you can see all the steps are there. And so I almost want to pause, but take a look at this, right? The trigger phrases are all there. The Copilot itself actually understands, okay, if they're asking for support, a customer may ask for help. They may ask to talk to a representative, support assistance. All of those things automatically built in for you. You don't have to take the brain power to start thinking about all the ways someone may ask for help. It's just done for you. And you can see all the other steps or questions and turn-based things it needs, such as, hey, get the user response for their first name, last name, a description of their problem, and of course, an email address that works. And you can see here we're connecting it to those global variables that we created. So contact name, description, and email. And you can see those are string values. And then very shortly, we're going to test the bot in just a moment. And so check this out, right? And it's because this is actually a working demo, I've just censored the Microsoft employee names in this, so you can't just go spam them. But so look, the chatbot, we ask for support. The bot says, please provide your name. So provide the name, provide a description of the issue. You can write down, lengthy issue I have. This person's saying I have a problem with my statement. Totally typical. And then ask for an email address. It's a real email address that he's entering in. And the reason we do that is so that you can actually see, what happens when the whole thing gets executed. And so you can see they receive this thank you email in the chat, but we also programmed that flow, which just ran in under a second, to add the Dataverse record and also send the individual an email confirming that, hey, we got you. And you can see that email on screen right now, that it actually worked with, like a real working email just got sent out, which is cool. The last thing you're seeing is that Power App. All we did was build the data structure. The UX, which of course is scalable to any platform, is also on screen right now. And you can see, hey, look, that ticket now shows up. You can actually see the 5 other sampler records show up here. And even within the UX experience, which I didn't even create, it just got generated for me. If I was a customer support person, I could actually go in, edit this, delete this. And in time, you can add other fields and even hey, get the customer to capture a picture of the problem they have. Or even if they capture a picture, use AI to actually validate, the severity of it. If there's things that can be extrapolated from an image for whatever situation you may have, or reading a document. There's so many cool things you can do, right? And what I love about this is as someone who, wanted to go down the developer path, I get so excited because I can still apply that small developer brain and thinking and now start applying it more liberally to this. Oh yeah, I understand what a string is. You have a variable, all these things, they still exist. It's just, made easier, just faster to get to, which is super cool.
That's awesome, Russell.
Yeah, thank you. I was talking. I hope that was an eye-opening demo because that was really done. It was done that quickly, and it works. And of course, if that can be done in 8 minutes, then you can start. You have a proof of concept. You can take that to the review people you need to add the other controls and gates. But the point is it makes everything faster. It makes everything faster, and so many more people can do that work too. And so what we have here is our AI showcase, because that video I get to, it's almost it was almost too fast, right? You got a developer a bit slower. But we're going to walk through a couple of our favorite features within these things. And so I'll hand it over to Catherine to walk through however many you like, Catherine. Take it away.
Awesome. Well, and I think what's really cool about the demo that Rustam just showed is he showed how they can all work together. But I wonder if the people on the line are kind of having announcement fatigue like we were earlier this year as we were announcing feature after feature, and all of them are so cool and worth getting excited about. So we're hoping to break some of those new features down and show you what those look like today. So let's start. I think all the Power Apps ones are worth showing. So we can start with Copilot Natural Language to App, which is the basic Copilot. I'm sure you guys have all seen this. An example could be create a building safety inspection app, and Power Apps is going to go in. It will suggest columns and data and create a working app that you can customize and use. So I mentioned this earlier where it's not going to be the lack of customizations. It's just getting you up and running faster by typing in, what is that, 6 words it looks like. So you type in 6 words in your English language and there you have it. It would be a working app that you could publish immediately just doing that. So we really hope that this will make apps easier to build. What's your line, Rustam? It's easier to build and faster to make.
Oh, it's easier to make, richer to use.
Easier to make and richer to use. And this is such a great example of that. And I think the more we see examples about natural language to app, the more impressed we've been by some of the complexity in what these copilots are able to do just using English as a programming language. The next one is the Excel to Canvas app. So Excel is still some programmers' favorite database. We get it. We've been there. But what does it look like if you can create a Canvas app from an Excel table? What's going to happen is that Power Apps will recognize the format. It'll recognize the columns and different inputs, and it will create a Dataverse table and potentially even an app that you can customize and use immediately. So this involves even less language. It's just a button. Let's take this Excel sheet and give me a Canvas app. No programming language necessary. And like we've talked about, I've been answering some questions in the chat as we've been going about the power of Dataverse, because for a long time, that's been what's made it so different and unique as a platform, is that when you have your data organized like this, the possibilities of what you can develop are endless. This is data in a usable, safe, secure form. So this is where taking that Excel database as it might exist today and transforming it to a Dataverse table will allow you to build these apps faster and to have better governance across the applications that are being developed. And our next one is the Copilot Controls in Canvas app. So here's another example, going back to that inspection app example. What's the longest inspection time and where did it take place? So we're asking this to this app. We just use our natural language to develop. And what Power Apps Copilot can do now is it will add natural language support to your apps to make them easier to use, like we talked about. So now you can ask this question of your app. It's that built-in Copilot, and it will give you an answer without scrolling. If you've seen any of the M365 Copilot demos, it's kind of like having that Copilot in Excel, where instead of going to look for an answer, it will just serve it up to you out of the Copilot. And that same demonstration would apply here for the Canvas app. So you can ask a question of your app and it will go behind the scenes. It will look at that Dataverse database and give you an answer just using the natural language feature. Pretty cool. I think these are only the top 3 that we're going to highlight. Oh, nope, we're going for another one. Why not? We can do one more. So this is the Copilot Control in Power Apps, and you can take it a step further than all the things we've showed you, trying to keep it high level, be inclusive of the audience here today, but you can query straight to your Power Apps. You'll see the example here on the screen, but it'll allow you to make those edits and use the Copilot to simplify some of the coding that you might need to do by adding additional sources. So there's lots of different ways that these Copilot functionalities work. I think if I were to summarize it, it's the ability to make things faster by using English as a programming language, by using many of our go-to languages, being English as a programming language, to make these apps faster and to make them richer to use by being able to surface that information up to anybody who may need to see it. Okay, this time I'm sure it's the last Power Apps example, so I'm passing it back to you, Rustam.
Cool. And so let's talk about Power Automate. What really cool AI features exist? I think you saw, the first one actually in that video, this idea of using natural language to create a cloud flow. And so, I love this. The question we sometimes get asked is okay, well, how complicated can it be? If I write a paragraph in, is it going to work? It depends, actually. Sometimes you may be pleasantly surprised. And so this is a real prompt, and I'll read it to you. Collect the audit status from Dataverse table daily. For successful audits, compose an email attaching PDF result to customer. For failed audits, compose an email for the manager to review. Intuitively in your head, you probably understand that. And surprisingly enough, Power Automate does too, right? Let's take a look at this screenshot. And so, okay, the first thing, collect audit status from Dataverse table daily. So the trigger is actually a reoccurrence. Every day, go and check Dataverse for new records. And then for each of these records, review with a condition, like an or statement, or an if statement rather, an if-then statement, so to speak. If it is yes, if the value within this record, or the new record is yes, then go and take this action, which is, go and attach an email PDF. And if it's not, send a second email. I'll bet that, it didn't get the entire thing right. I said, hey, send it to my manager and then attach a PDF. It's getting some of the things done, but this is the whole point, right? It's just getting started so much faster. And then you can come in, take a look, change what you need and augment with just mouse and keyboard. And I think that's pretty powerful. That's pretty cool, right? And yes, if you do mention third-party connectors, whether it's DocuSign, Adobe, SAP, there's a very good chance it'll recognize that and throw in that connector into the pre-built flow, which I think is just super cool. Like it's magical, right? Like these things work and they work today. We've talked about natural language for cloud flows. There's also now something in public preview as of last month for desktop flows. And so you heard Catherine talk about RPA, robotic process automation. This idea of, hey, can I actually have a virtual human in front of like a virtual machine, clicking the mouse, copying and pasting things, taking screenshots without any human being there. So that's what robotic process automation is. It's very popular for customers who have very old legacy systems that they just cannot get rid of, and there needs to be a human there. But what if there didn't need to be a human there? And if you didn't need to change the system? That is what RPA is. And so bringing Copilot to RPA, my goodness, right? How cool is that? So the prompt here is, how can I extract images from a PDF file? And then, if you're in a computer and you're using a file repository, like even literally in File Explorer or a OneDrive or a Dropbox, and it just happens to be connected to you, being able to do an operation that a human otherwise would be copying and pasting text, automate that and use AI to go and scan that and extract data. What's also super, super cool with this feature is it can even help you actually author desktop-related languages, whether it be PowerShell, VBScript, DOS, and other languages like Python and JavaScript. So it's actually already giving you extensibility to write, command line scripts to execute things on Windows just within this new feature, which I think is just amazing. For people who actually, or organizations that use Power Automate more richly, we are now the meta for AI is just all over. There's AI inception happening here. And so what is this feature? It's a Copilot to analyze automation activity. And so within your data estate, imagine you are running many flows and you're interested in running analysis on hey, what flows are running hot, what flows are not running, have errors, all this. You can just ask AI, hey, show me the top failed flows by number of runs together with their owner info. And Copilot within the admin center for Power Automate for an IT, for governance purposes, can even make your jobs easier because you can just use natural language to actually just run a query and get responses in plain English and then take action against it. I think that is just super cool, because I mentioned hey, AI is good for that. Makes it easier and richer to use. It's also richer to use for IT administrator, for governance people. We're making your jobs easier, and we'll get to even more on that in just a moment. And so we're trying to make everyone's jobs easier here, which is really cool. I'll hand it back over to Catherine to talk about Copilot Studio features.
Awesome. Copilot Studio is definitely one of the coolest things that's been announced, and I want to make sure Rustam kind of mentioned it during the demo earlier, but Copilot Studio is Power Virtual Agents with the rebrand and with an expanded kind of feature set. So if you're looking at this and it looks familiar, it most likely is, but let's dive into some of these Copilot Studio features. starting with the natural language to topics, I believe is our first one up. So here's another example is when you've got your Copilot and you need it to ask the user for this information to start, and then it can show an adaptive card for confirmation using just the language, and look at how many data sources that it's asking for input and then to log. Copilot Studio will create the topic and customize that so that way you're able to use it. So you'll see here on the back end, it's doing all the things that you need. It shows the actions, it breaks it down. But for the developer, all you need to do is to use your natural language to help develop these topic cards to, again, help these bots be up and running faster than ever before. The next one is the one that Rustam helped demonstrate, and this is for sure one of the coolest things that I think we've seen when it comes to the bot building world, but this is the generative answers. So this will allow you to combine public websites and internal sites to create dynamic generative answers, more or less building a working, usable bot without a single line of code and without any edits whatsoever. So an example that Rustam gave, but we can use one here, is that you could set it up. I can point my bot with a couple of clicks to the Microsoft website, to Microsoft.com, and then immediately start asking questions about Microsoft.com, and the bot and the generative answers will be able to pull information from the site and put it in an answer form without me making any edits whatsoever. This allows your bot to be up and running and then make it customizable so you can have it point to answers, you can have that topic library, and a lot of the different features that Rustam walked through. But I think the ability to set up a bot in under 30 seconds is really what sets apart the generative answers in the Copilot Studio. Next up for our demo is the sourcing document. So this one's super helpful too. So when a user asks a question and the bot doesn't have a defined topic, it can generate an answer from the content by uploading various documents for the bot to choose from. And this is where, I mean, AI just really shines and has the ability to make a difference in all of our lives, whether it be in the bots or be in our personal productivity, which we've had a couple questions about that as well. But if you're able to upload a document, the bot and Copilot Studio will hold that document and scan it. So then instead of just using a public-facing website or an internal SharePoint site or whatever you're pointing your bot to, it can even take it down from an FAQ. It can take it down from different documents that you have uploaded because it'll be able to process that information using the artificial intelligence within the Copilot Studio and come up with an answer. So generative answers to us means that you did not have to type in the correct answer to a specific question, but instead it has the intelligence to read a question, process the topic, and pull an answer that closely matches what that question might be from a variety of sources. So we think that these sourcing from documents will be definitely a game changer depending on the type of bot, but we can see many use cases where this will make it a lot more effective for different users looking for answers to their questions. Generative actions is similar to generative answers, but as described, it will be the action side of it. So if you ask the bot to do something, it will understand the request, review various actions that it has the ability to take, and identify ones that will fulfill that request. So this one, for example, in this test chat is asking what the weather will look like, and it will pull that from a different app and is able to surface that information, take an action on that request. In this example, he asked where I'm flying next Wednesday, and the bot was able to go look at where he's going, where he's coming from, and take that data from the weather app and surface it up. So this is really just expanding the ability of the bot. And I think that's part of the reason why that, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't in charge, but for the Copilot Studio, it's an expanded view of what a bot can be. We want to make sure that it's not just providing answers, but it can take actions depending on what you want this bot to be able to do. And generative actions is able to extend that and make it more effective and making your lives easier just through that natural language abilities.
Great, Catherine. I'll take it over for Power Pages. And so there's technically two features, but one that's highlighted here. And so again, the idea of using Copilots, can I just write a sentence and get a website? Yes, you can. And so that's one feature. What's shown on screen right now is the ability, of course, to actually develop web pages, so within a website. And even more than that, you can tell it like, hey, change the tonality of the copy on this website to be something that's more friendly or more specific to a certain audience. This screenshot in particular with websites. This idea of form or being able to capture user information is something that's a very, very common use case. And so we've added the ability to use Copilot to actually generate a form, which also just takes care of the backend for you securely, or you can connect that to another backend as you need. And so what you're seeing is, hey, a website for a student loan application. The prompt, I'm pretty sure, was, yeah, I need an application form for a student loan. Copilot, you have to understand, also understands nuance, right? Like even in the example, in some of the earlier screenshots, right, where we provided like, hey, create a support ticket app. It actually understands support ticket. Like it understands the context, like, okay, like what things may be involved with support ticket like requests. And so in this case for student loan, it actually understands, hey, what things would I need in this? Like a university or college may be a field. Like it understands to just do that on your behalf. It does a best guess and surfaces things it thinks may be valuable. And so with Power Pages, again, Copilot is there for, of course, authoring pages, even in the future, being able to change the theme of a page. And of course, right now, being able to rapidly create forms without the need of typing in every single input and output and what it's got to connect to. Over to you, Catherine.
Awesome. So AI Builder, we can't forget about her. She is the OG of AI in the Power Platform, but even AI Builder has some upgrades that have come. So the feature we're going to talk about today is how Azure OpenAI models can work with templates. So you'll see here that it'll be able to generate text summarizations and more. And I saw that we had a comment about how there are so many features, and we are doing kind of a speed round trying to make sure that we cover them all. But we're so confident that one of these will make an impact in your business, if not more than one. So we are trying to cover as many as possible. But AI Builder will let you create GPT models for your data that you're able to customize and use. So using these OpenAI models with the templates that exist today is really giving you as the developer to create your own GPTs. And you'll see a couple of the examples here. If you extract information from invoices, and it will get to know your data and your templates, so you can create your own model, which will make you more productive. And so I think the cool part here is that we're all familiar with some of the GPTs that exist today, but what if it was able to think like you do and think in the way of your business, so that way it's custom for you and it'll generate those responses and summarizations that you need in your business, starting from a template, so that way it's not starting from scratch, and again gives you that efficiency that we're all looking for and making AI accessible sooner rather than later in our business.
Terrific. And I know I teased this a bit earlier about, making the lives of IT governance professionals, all the administrative work. Yes, we're applying AI there. So a little bit of that on the Power Automate side. But it's just so cool, right? Like the applications we have. And so it's two that I'm really excited to share for Dataverse and managed environments. And so there's a feature right now that's rolling in preview called Power Platform Advisor. And so someone who's managing across their Power Platform estate, and who perhaps, there's a lot of reporting on governance and security, for example, if there's apps that have data leak issues or, too many admins running it, power users, making edits to the app, a variety of things. Advisor provides admins proactive recommendations and actions to actually govern and secure against any of these vulnerabilities or suggestions. And so cleaning up unused apps. If this app has been touched in 90, 100 days, whatever it is, Copilot can actually help surface that for you, providing you visibility, helping clean up if there are things that are being overshared. And so if there's an app that's designed or intended to be used by a few sets of users and sprawl starts happening or many requests starts happening, it'll actually recommend, hey, did you want to reevaluate the security policies or security access or role-based access needed for this app, and other things. And so I think that's super cool. This is just like the tip of the iceberg of innovation that's coming for just administration purposes. So much more stuff is coming. And even with that, the other really cool thing that's also actually it's generally available now, things just keep changing, don't they? Is I think this is super cool. And so application lifecycle management, AI deployment notes. You may have a whole bunch of developers or citizen developers or individual employees that are developing solutions, and they may keep iterating on their solutions. And every time they make an iteration, they may not document what they changed. What if AI just did that for you? How cool is that? And so AI deployment notes, it'll actually understand what changes that a user made between V1 and V2 or V2.1 when they published it out, and author something in plain English that like, hey, like this feature got updated, a row was added, or a UX tweak was made. Any of these things are possible. And that's, again, just something that helps admins understand, oh, okay, like I understand what changes. If you have gates that you build in, like, hey, every app that gets published or any changes has to go through IT, a review process, great. That just makes the job of the person who authors that app and the person that reviews it, less work is involved. And everything is well documented too, so it's even more compliant, less prone to human error, all those things, which I think is super cool, and more is coming. And so, look, we've covered a lot of exciting stuff. I want you to know, like Catherine and I, like we really get jazzed up about this because we think it's so cool, and we get to learn like, hey, what's on the horizon? We're like, oh my goodness, this is just, it's so cool, right? And so much of that is coming, and I'm so happy that so much of it is already here and can be used. And you can do this right now. You can just spin up a trial license, or go into your tenant and turn on these capabilities right now, which is super cool. And so in closing, let's go back to, how we opened with the idea of, leadership, seeing and understanding like, wait, Power Platform did this. Like, what do we got to do to make this happen more often, right? This idea of think big. I respect that there was a time and a place that, hey, Power Platform, isn't where it needs to be, but it is some place that is so much more mature, some place that is enterprise ready, that businesses bet mission critical workloads on our platform, and it delivers, and they continue to invest and want more, which is why we continue to innovate. And so the thing I want to leave you with this is like this idea, like how do we transform 1,000 processes a year, right? How do you make it real? I've seen a couple of questions. There's a lot of questions, by the way, so I appreciate the engagement. It's tough to answer live and present at the same time, so forgive us if we haven't been able to address all the questions that have come, and we've done as best we can. There are a lot of questions about like, hey, like, pro developers, as IT managers, like, yes, I know these things exist, COE kits, but like, what is like a better way to think about this? And this is our attempt at answering that. Like, how do you make this real? And it comes from a number of learnings where customers have perhaps been opposed to it, or a certain leader didn't see it in a certain way. And so like, these are kind of like the 6 ways to think about it. Number 1 is actually culture. When you're introducing a new technology that you want or intended on being something very big, top-down executive support is something that I think is very critical. It's important, right? Without that, you may encounter roadblocks in the future, right? Or your ambitions may be limited. This idea of getting, leadership to buy in, to understand this, to see that, wait, okay, yes, there's work that needs to be done to make this happen. However, the juice is worth the squeeze, because look at like how all the ways in which this platform can be retooled, used. So 6 patterns, like, wait, I want all 6 of those things to be true in my organization. And so starting with culture is super important. Having leadership, of course, in IT, in line of business is important. There is a very important role for IT to play. Is this about, often people say this is creating more work for IT, but what are you trading off in place of that? And so where IT plays a role in being that center of excellence in governance and security and even budgeting, and charging different cost centers as needed, and helping in adoption. Those are all roles and things that IT can and should have a hand in. For the pro developers, or for organizations that have a pro developer audience, what is their job, or what things need to change for that to be true? So retooling their workflows to scale and engage with line of business information workers. I think there are actually organizations today, it's not even a vision, where, the idea of a pro developer is now more of an overseer or a consultant versus just having to, write lines of code, their KPIs, how many employees am I now helping produce apps, because they have the expertise to understand a lot of the technical backend. And, it's very easy for them to go and do a technical review of a Power App than it is for, an information worker. And so they're getting actually different satisfaction by working with line of business, delivering on their asks faster, more throughput, more results, more yield of apps that are working and being used, right? It's enrichment for the employee, enrichment for pro developers, or at least we've seen some organizations adopt that mentality. Of course, line of business, what departments, there should be power users, champions, people that want to raise their hands. that want to be excited. If you have an Excel power user, every organization, every team probably has someone you rely on who's like, this is my Excel guy, right? Or my Excel gal, that's fine. And those people, ask them like, do you want to try this out? Would you like to try and take your love of understanding complex numerical, logical things and trying it in a different way? I'm sure there'll be a little bit of resistance, but once they try it, they'll probably be excited to show, look at what I made, look at what I can do. We see that all the time. And then the last two is about how do we make sure this is sustainable and it's for the long run. So of course, training, doing hackathons, amazing stuff. Microsoft can host them for you, partners host them, and you can also host them yourself. Hackathons about bringing people from across the businesses just to spend a day or spend a week, spend a chunk of time working with peers, with technology, and with experts, and then trying to solve a solution. And chances are, pretty much out of every hackathon that I've ever attended or seen or heard, there's something that moved into POC and then eventually into production. And that's saving time and money and enriching employees' experience. And nurturing this idea of skilling. We love this idea of continuous learning. It's incumbent, I think, in many of our jobs. It certainly is for Catherine and I, because every time a new feature comes out, we have to understand, okay, how can we use this? How can customers use it? And what are the best practices? And so this idea of creating a culture of skilling as well. And by the way, for skilling, we have many app in a day workshops, even automation in a day workshops, dashboard in a day workshops hosted by partners, hosted by us. So my point of saying that is like all these types of sessions are free and they're out there, and just circulating that information to your organization is what's important. And of course, you're not in this alone. You can get external support from Microsoft, from our partners, from professional consultants. Power Platform has been around for some time. It's at like the precipice of, I think, going much bigger than we ever anticipated. And so there's many people out there who are certified in Power Platform, are consultants that are partners that are. This is a very maturing business, and so you won't be alone if you're asking for help. And that's everything.
Awesome. Thank you, Rustam, and thank you to everyone who was able to join us today. These questions were great. The engagement was awesome. We hope you'll want to join us again. I put it in the chat answering someone's questions, but we offer these on a regular basis. So continue to check the Microsoft events site. There's also variations of this event. Some are the virtual training days that allow you to get more technical and see what that would be like to build an app for yourself. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we hope that you learned something new today.
Thank you so much.